down on the beach doing some beachcombing, and there's this amazing seaweed drift that's washed in. We're down at Urquhart's Bluff here. I'll show you some of these things that are common things that you can find in a seaweed drift like this. Probably my favourite one to find when it's fresh is this one. Sea velvet. Some people call it dead man's fingers. Its species name is Codium, possibly Codium fragile. There's a few different ones that are quite similar. But if we're making up common names, I think my favourite name will be green dreadlocks. This one is just like a wig straight out of Pirates of the Caribbean. And I'll have to demonstrate. Yeah, let's shake it off a bit. How's that? That look good? You can scare a few kids with this one. I love it. Oh, and you get the smell and the sand to linger with you for ages. This one is called bull kelp, and it's a tiny, tiny little fragment of what was once probably a very, very large piece of seaweed. Bull kelp is the fastest growing, strongest, biggest seaweed we have around, Dervilia potetorum. It's actually named because the Aboriginal people used to fashion it into a water carrying device for potable water, potetorum. It's amazing. You can cut it into various lengths, and as it dries, it tightens up, it goes hard, and it's quite an artistic one. And sea snails love Sweden, creates forests under the ocean. Some other things that are common to find when you're looking through a beach drift like this are sponges, all in phylum Porifera, because they're filled with pores to filter the seawater. They're very, very basic, simple animals, but at the same time, they come in such a variety of shapes and structure. You can't really tell a sponge species by its shape alone, because the water flow will determine where it happens to be. Stuck on a rock will determine its shape. So I can't get much closer than Porifera in this one. This sort of brain-looking thing that is a little past its use-by date, you might look at that and think it's some kind of seaweed, but actually a quick sniff test will tell you that this is rotting and certainly of animal origin. This is an ascidian, and actually taxonomically it's very interesting, because when it's a plankton, it actually has a cord in its back, a notochord, which resembles what we have in our back. So it's actually in the same phylum as us. That is our furthest possible, closest animal relative. Got other ones here, this red seaweed. This one is growing on some sea grass, a true plant. Of course, all seaweed is algae. You can call them plants, that's fine. But this one is an epiphyte of this Amphibolus antarctica seagrass, which we have meadows of out here, and are fantastic biologically productive ecosystems. And another one, a favourite of mine, is the leather kelp or golden kelp. And this one I do collect when it's fresh, dry it out, snip it into bits, and put it in my spaghetti and stir fry. Seaweed is great food. Some more cool stuff to show you. This one, you might look at it and think that it's the Codium that we were looking at before, but actually it's got a different texture to it. And this is a different genus called Caulerpa, a very common seaweed genus. It also feels nice, gets called dead man's fingers, etc. We can call it a different type of dreadlocks if you like. It's got a live herbivore snail on it. This is the green Warrener snail, or Turbo Lunella undulata. And if you look under there, there's its black flesh feeding on the seaweed, but also it's got that white trapdoor, which often you find in abundance just washed up by themselves. But every single one of them has been produced by this species of snail, the operculum, or the trapdoor, which does protect it from predators, but also if it's out of the water, this has got a big risk of drying out, and so closing the trapdoor prevents that from happening. That's its main purpose. This is a cool one here, for obvious reasons. The sea apple, Codium pomoides. Pom is apple in some language. And this one's also got little ascidians growing on it too, the little animals we were talking about before. But look at that, I'm pretty tempted to give it a big chunk, but I'm not gonna. I'll draw the line there. Sometimes you find the absolute weirdest stuff washed up in the beach. Look at this thing. I have absolutely no idea what it is, but here it is. It seems to be growing out of the codium. Oh well, we've managed to find some other stuff too. This one you might think looks like a piece of seaweed, and you find them quite commonly. This is the egg case of a skate, which is sort of a mix between a shark and a stingray. It's got the body of a stingray and the tail of a shark. It's a skate. There are similar ones which are laid by the cat sharks, but this particular one comes from a skate. You can see where the animal's chewed its way out. It's probably designed to look something similar to this. Because if I'm the parent skate and I lay my eggs in there, that's a nutritious packet for all sorts of things to eat. It needs to be well camouflaged. And it really does look very similar to these bubbles or air sacs that grow on seaweed to keep it floating. And they float because they need energy from that thing, just like plants. They photosynthesize to grow. Another couple of interesting things we've found. This seaweed with these tufts of growth coming out of the corners here. That's a characteristic for this species. If I was to go back and look it up, I'd look in Marine Plants of Australia by John Huisman. A really, really beautiful book which does cover this species, I think, and many of the other species from temperate Australia. Here's a fan sponge, or dead man's finger sponge again, with some of the original colour. Once they wash up, they lose that colour and become quite brown very quickly. But look at that orange. If you go snorkeling or diving out there, the colour you're going to see is from these beautiful sponges. This one looks like a species of red algae, and it's got these sort of globular structures to it, and I guess if I squeeze it, it's filled with either water, or some of them are often filled with really sticky mucus, and it's thought that that is an anti-herbivore defense for the red algae. But I'm not quite sure whether that's what's happening in this one. But it's certainly very interesting and very different to the other red species which have such feather-like structures to them. We've got a couple of common items here. They're always worth checking out and having a look at. Of course, this is your cuttlefish shell, the internal shell from a cuttlefish, which are relatives of octopus and squid. It's not a cuttlefish bone, although it really does act like that. It's a sort of structure, a backbone sort of deal. But it's in the snail family, and all snails have their shells on the outside, apart from the cephalopods, which have them internally. Cuttlefish all breed and die at the same time. They're quick growing and short-lived. And so you can imagine that a cuttlefish with this incredible organic body on the outside, once it's there floating, everything's going to want to come and eat it. So it often leaves its marks on it. So something will come up and bite it, like that, and there we are. It's left its tooth impressions. If I was to pick this up off the beach, I'd look and think that that is extremely weird, because that's human teeth marks. Whereas these scratches here, probably from little fish, little triangular bite marks here. Sometimes though you see the big seal-shaped, dolphin-shaped cone impressions left in this soft calcium carbonate shell. So look, I hope that by having a walk through the beach seaweed drift with us, you've got a bit of an understanding now of just the incredible diversity that you're likely to see. And the fact is that I've been doing this for a number of years. I've picked up a few names here and there, but I don't know what this is all the way down here. All these different species growing on this stretch. It's one piece of seagrass. It's like picture a field of this under the water, and you've got all these different species growing up along it. It's different stories, like in a forest, and different aquatic creatures will inhabit this area or this area or this area. It's an incredibly rich habitat happening underneath the water, and it's fantastic. There's always more stuff to know. All of these types of seaweed with their incredible intricate beauty. I can tell you it's a brown seaweed, and that's all. This one, I don't think I've ever seen this one before. And for someone who beachcombs all the time, that's such an exciting thing. I'll try and find out what it is, but probably a red seaweed. Look at these leaves. Leaves on this beautiful brown type as well. Probably if we looked at this closely, there'd be encrusting algae, even further complexity and detail to investigate. So there's always something on offer if you look.